The morning air over the Alps sparkled in sunlight. On the granite-paved path leading to the Montclair Country Club, the fortress of Geneva's elite, Elena Moretti walked as lightly as the breeze. Her sand-colored linen dress hugged her tall, slender frame. Her chestnut hair was tied low, with a few wisps swaying in the faint scent of lily of the valley. Slung over her shoulder was an old canvas tote bearing the faded words Fondazione Bibliotheca Popolare, a memento from her days fundraising for rural libraries in southern Italy. At the main gate, security guard Rolf Steiner, a burly Swiss man with a neatly trimmed mustache and a clipboard in hand, raised his arm to stop her. "Sorry. Kitchen staff entrance is around the back." Rolf's tone wasn't hostile, but it was cold enough to slam shut an invisible door. Elena pressed her lips together. She had anticipated a few judgmental stares, but not a dismissal this blunt. A Porsche pulled up beside the gate, the window lowered. Beatrice von Amsberg, the wife of an investment advisor, famed for her pearl collection, raised an eyebrow as she looked Elena over. After a few seconds of silence, she gave a half-smile and turned to her friend in the passenger seat. "Sherry, it seems Montclair is hiring public school tutors as waitstaff now." A soft laugh followed, just loud enough to sting the pride. Elena straightened her back, touching the tiny silver pin on her chest, a modest insignia of the Moretti Foundation, known to nearly every financier in Europe except those too busy powdering their faces. She didn't need to flaunt it. Today, she was here as herself, not her family's bank account. But she hadn't forgotten her purpose. Sophia Lindgren, her Swedish friend, had asked Elena to support a scholarship initiative for immigrant youth. This spring tea was meant to court potential donors. Elena lifted her chin and addressed Rolf. "I'm a guest of Miss Lindgren. Could you check the list again?" Rolf frowned. There it was, E. Moretti, listed under Guest Room 3 Montclair Library Access. He looked momentarily uncertain. His eyes seemed to ask, "Is she that Moretti?" Elena offered a courteous smile, warm enough to thaw the gate's frost of arrogance. Rolf stepped back. "My apologies for the mistake, miss." Elena gave a polite nod and walked through the gate. In the Porsche's side mirror, she caught Beatrice frowning. Not quite out of confusion, but curiosity. And at Montclair, curiosity was always the beginning of a storm. Elena stepped into La Verrière, Montclair's famed glasshouse salon. The curved glass ceiling arched like a French cathedral dome, where the morning light filtered through the maple trees outside, casting shimmering, embroidery-like patterns across the cream-white marble floor. Inside, the tables were dressed in rose-ash linen, Villeroy and Bach porcelain cups arranged with precision. The gentle sound of a harp echoed from a distant corner, weaving through the scent of lavender and bergamot rising from madeleines beside chilled champagne flutes. The atmosphere was refined, serene, but behind every smile lay a hidden blade. Sophia Lindgren, Elena's friend, stood near a tea station. She wore a simple deep violet dress, her hair swept into a high chignon, a sheer scarf printed with wildflowers native to Skane loosely wrapped around her neck. Upon spotting Elena, Sophia's face lit up with a radiant smile as she came forward and embraced her lightly. "You finally made it. Thank you for not leaving me alone among the swans." Elena let out a soft laugh, squeezing her friend's shoulder. "Swans or crows in couture?" They both chuckled, though Elena didn't miss the glance cast from the central table, where Beatrice von Amsberg sat, flanked by Clara Fontaine and Margot Weiss, the leading figures of Montclair's so-called Camellia Table, a nickname for the club's most powerful and ruthless women. Clara, wearing Prada sunglasses indoors, was stirring her tea slowly, as though controlling the room with the flick of her wrist. Margot, legs elegantly crossed in a vineyard-patterned Dior dress, held her phone up, deliberately capturing a less-than-flattering angle of Elena. Sophia whispered, "Clara called you La Bibliotecaria in Fuga, the runaway librarian. No one knows what you're supposedly running from." "It's just their habit," Elena replied, eyes still fixed on the trio. "They always need a story for anyone who doesn't mirror them." The click of heels grew louder. Beatrice had stood up, swirling her champagne glass gently. Her voice, smooth as silk wrapped around a blade, cut through the space. Miss Moretti, my apologies for the confusion at the gate. You really should wear a name tag. Here, it's easy to mistake staff for guests. No one laughed. Sophia tugged gently at Elena's hand, but Elena only tilted her head slightly. I don't mind. There are things one can't buy with a name tag. Like education, for instance. A beat of silence. Clara frowned. Margot lowered her phone. Beatrice smiled, though her eyes narrowed slightly. Oh? And where did you study? I've heard Italians favor studying for pleasure. Not quite as practical as we are here. Elena lifted her teacup, the scent of orange blossom drifting upward. She took a sip, then placed the cup gently back on its saucer. Her gaze was neither sharp nor cold, just steady. I studied in Bologna, then at the Sorbonne. But in truth, I learned the most from fundraising for libraries serving migrant children. There, I didn't learn from books, but from how people treat those with less power than themselves. Sophia held her breath. Even the soft clink of teaspoons seemed to pause. Margot clicked her tongue quietly. Clara grew pensive, lips pressed into a fine, razor-thin line. Beatrice laughed, this time audibly. Ah, so you're the kind of woman who plays the morality game. You'll fit in well with the charity crowd. Elena nodded calmly, unwavering. And I'm the woman who recently declined a €5 million grant to Montclair because the foundation's records were unclear. Beatrice's teacup froze midair. I came today, Elena continued, her tone even, to reconsider that decision. No one laughed now. No phones were raised. Clara suddenly leaned down, fumbling for something in her purse. Margot glanced around, scanning for allies. Beatrice clenched her glass so tightly her nails left white marks in the crystal. But Elena had already turned away, Sophia gently taking her hand and guiding her toward the garden. Beyond the lilac trellises, a small chamber ensemble was about to begin. Elena paused. She didn't look back. They're not used to being watched, she murmured. Only to watching others. That habit will turn on them. A light breeze drifted through the lilac trellises, carrying with it the distant voice of a viola. The aroma of Assam black tea and orange blossom seemed to pause in midair as though watching Elena Moretti. She walked slowly across the Montclair garden, fingers tightening on the frayed strap of her canvas bag, her gaze never wavering. No aide accompanied her, no entourage followed. There was only Elena and a single purpose. In the annex, the silent auction room, special guests placed confidential bids on cultural arts endowments. Project boards lined the walls. One read, Montclair Youth Opera Initiative. Dossier sponsored by Fons Helvetia. Elena stopped before the board without a word. She opened her bag and drew out a cream envelope, its flap sealed with the scarlet wax crest of the Moretti Foundation. Setting it on the organizer's table, she spoke softly. For the Oversight Committee. The aide glanced at the E. Moretti impressed in the seal, and his hesitation vanished. He bowed, hands trembling as he accepted it. Out on the veranda reception, Beatrice von Amberg stood amid a circle of powerful ladies, champagne glass aloft. She chuckled about a peculiar guest in flats and a library tote, her sarcasm earning thin, reluctant smiles. Clara Fontaine sipped her drink and stared toward the rear gardens. She doesn't strike me as someone who needs to hear sarcasm. Beatrice's brow creased. People who don't need sarcasm often need the truth. A soft ding chimed overhead. May we have your attention, please? All guests are invited to the main hall for an interim funding update from the Moretti Foundation. The preliminary report will begin in a few minutes. A ripple of murmurs spread like fire through silk. Never in Montclair's history had the Moretti Foundation issued a live announcement at an event. Beatrice's face blanched. That can't be real. Warm lights bathed the oak stage in the main hall. Raymond Weiss, senior delegate for Western Switzerland on the Foundation's council, stepped forward, his voice low and steady. Ladies and gentlemen, we have an important announcement. Following an internal review initiated by Miss Elena Moretti, the Moretti Foundation is suspending all support for projects linked to Fons Helvetia, including the Montclair Youth Opera Initiative. Silence froze the room. A faint crash broke it, crystal shattering. Beatrice stood rigid in the crowd, hand trembling, her complexion chalk-white. This is a mistake. The Foundation has no right to interfere with Montclair's patrons. Raymond adjusted his glasses, meeting her gaze. The foundation has every right over the 6.3 million francs you once called a lifetime commitment. The contract mentions no lifetime, only transparency. Backstage, Elena entered through a side door. No master of ceremonies announced her, none was needed. Every eye turned toward her. Morning snickers dissolved like mist. Clara Fontaine stepped aside wordlessly. Margot Weiss bowed her head. Elena showed no anger, no hauteur, only calm resolve. She paused center stage, shifted her bag strap, and looked to the front row where Beatrice sat, petrified. "I'm not here to teach anyone a lesson," she said, voice even. "I'm here to remind you of this: compassion does not require a D or gown. Power does not require Bollinger. And integrity needs no applause." No one spoke. Outside the hall, the last spring breeze stirred Montclair's dome. In the gentle sunlight, Elena walked away. She needed no escort, no helicopter, only herself, her worn canvas bag bearing the name of a rural Italian library, and a pair of sensible shoes. She never looked back. For the first time, all of Montclair was looking after her. 3 days after the fateful tea at Montclair, the air in Geneva's most exclusive private club no longer echoed with laughter or dazzling greetings. In their place lingered a chill, a hush like a storm crouching behind the perfectly trimmed cypress trees. No one mentioned the name Elena Moretti aloud, but everyone was thinking it. Heavily. Inescapably. Clara Fontaine, once the head of Montclair's arts funding committee, sat in her discreet oak-paneled office. Her phone rang for the 3rd time that morning. The caller ID read, "Fondation pour l'Art de Genève." She didn't pick up, not because she didn't know what they wanted, but because she knew far too well. The report submitted by the Moretti Foundation had listed her name under 2 projects flagged for lack of transparency in budget allocation. What used to be brushed off as internal dealings had now been dragged into the light. On her desk lay the latest issue of L'Elite magazine, its headline stretched across the cover. When cultural patronage becomes a political mask, is the Montclair scandal just the tip of the iceberg? Clara folded the magazine shut and moved to draw the curtains. She had never feared daylight this much. Elsewhere in the city, at a boutique café once known as the morning stage for Geneva's grand dames, Beatrice von Amsberg sat alone beside a cold espresso. No more friends encircled her. No one asked to be introduced to the board. No cheerful waitstaff greeted her. This morning, the server placed the check on her table wordlessly. Not out of rudeness. Not out of disdain. Simply emptiness. Beatrice unlocked her phone and opened the chat group Les Doyens, the social circle of Montclair's most influential women. A notification appeared. "You have been removed by the group administrator." Back at Montclair, in the Board of Governors meeting room, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Before each member sat a printed copy of the full audit report left by Elena Moretti. Chairman Georges Lefebvre set down his pen, voice measured but firm. "If no one responds, it will be taken as full agreement. If we do nothing, other donors will walk away. And Montclair, no matter how rich its past, cannot survive on nostalgia." A legal counsel murmured, "If we do act, there could be litigation. Mrs. von Amberg is still an honorary member." George shook his head. "No one is honorary forever. And the funds quietly siphoned through Fonds Helvetia over the past 4 years will not stay quiet any longer." The meeting ended in silence. No applause. None was needed. The next morning, Le Courrier de Genève ran a front-page editorial. "One woman has changed the way Geneva sees soft power. Not through speeches, but through silence. She didn't walk onto that stage in haute couture, but with a faded library tote. And when she left, no one dared mock a quiet woman again." The photograph showed Elena Moretti beneath the filtered light of Montclair's great hall. She wasn't facing the camera, wasn't posing. But no caption was needed, everyone knew who she was. In a small apartment in Bern, Elena was watering plants on her balcony when the doorbell rang. A courier in a suit handed her a white envelope embossed with the official seal of the European Union's Office of Cultural Affairs. She opened it. Inside was a letter handwritten in blue ink. "Dear Miss Moretti, the European Cultural Advisory Council would like to invite you to serve as an independent oversight advisor, not because of your prominence, but because your impact is impossible to ignore in a world tired of performative politeness. We are not looking for those who speak the loudest. We are looking for those others are compelled to listen to. Sincerely, Frederick Blanchard, President." Elena folded the letter and placed it on her wooden table beside a cooling cup of tea. She did not smile. She didn't need to. She had long known, the woman who has nothing to prove to the world is the one who changes where the world stands. Montclair had not fallen. The walls still stood. Wine was still poured. Gowns still swished and the membership list remained long. But gazes had shifted. Laughter was quieter. And those who once scoffed at Elena now walked more softly, spoke more slowly, and looked more closely at the women carrying canvas bags. Because they had learned true power does not lie in the dress. It lies in the woman who doesn't need one to walk into any room. 1 week after the Montclair affair, the season's first snow fell quietly onto Bern's bluestone rooftops. Elena Moretti sat in her small library, a cedar-lined room whose walls were hidden by books, morning light seeping through a misted window pane. She set her teacup down and ran a hand over the thick dossier before her. Cross-border cultural budget vetting procedures, European Union Commission. Stamped in blue ink, approved, supervisory advisor, E. Moretti. There were no ribbons, no laudatory ceremony, no cocktail reception. Elena had never needed any of that. On a shelf hung the old canvas tote, neatly pressed beside a black-and-white photograph of her and her grandfather in the Bologna library. In the picture, she is 17, wearing a gray sweater, cradling a stack of books, smiling sideways. Her grandfather, Giulio Moretti, rests a hand on her shoulder, his gaze calm as a mountain. His voice echoed from memory. You don't have to stay where people don't understand your language. When you are strong enough, your very presence becomes the language. That afternoon, a handwritten letter arrived at Montclair's executive office. No signature was required, the recipient already knew it was coming. To the Montclair Executive Board. I hereby withdraw my entire presence from Montclair Country Club, including all supervisory, advisory, and foundation partner roles. I do not do this to punish, but to make space for change if you truly desire it. A place changes only when people are willing to see themselves in the mirror, unvarnished. I am not angry. I simply no longer need it. Elena Moretti. The letter was read aloud in an emergency session. No one laughed. No one objected. Someone sighed, another folded their hands, and a third, Beatrice von Amsberg, quietly rose and left without asking permission. That same day, at Bern Hauptbahnhof, Elena boarded a train for Vienna where she would begin her new post with the EU Cultural Commission. She wore a honey-colored wool coat, a hand-knitted scarf, and carried just 2 things, a suitcase of books and the battered library tote. As the train pulled away, Bern blurred behind a veil of snow. No one saw her off, there were no flowers, no orchestral swell. Yet Elena felt as light as if she had set down a weight she'd long carried without knowing. She no longer thought of Montclair. She didn't need to. A crow's nest is only a nest if you stay in it. She had flown, not to be higher, but to be farther away. Away from derisive laughter, from nods coded in politeness, from the stage where reputation is worn like fur. A month later, at a closed-door conference in Brussels on European cultural funding reform, the chair introduced her. Our special advisor today needs no flourish, for her influence was measured by the silence of an entire Geneva club. Elena took the podium, no notes, no aid adjusting the microphone, and said only one sentence. Transparency needs no strongman to guard it, it needs one person quiet enough not to beg for company. The hall rose to its feet. Montclair did not collapse, but it changed. No longer a walled fortress, it rehung the sign, membership under review with new clauses. Community service, mandatory. Funding transparency reports, public. Honorary status, reviewed every 2 years. People called it the Moretti effect. Elena never accepted the name. To her it was merely the consequence of truth. In her Vienna apartment, Elena set her grandfather's old photograph on a wooden shelf beside a small silver locket. Nothing else was needed. She had brought everything she chose to carry, dignity, knowledge, and a silence that could not be drowned out. And now, as she stepped through a new doorway, she did not look back. For she knew that those like her need not defeat anyone. They need only move forward, and everything behind shifts in response.